And welcome back. Well, a couple guests on today that you know, Mike Strazioso and Denny Welch. Today they are talking about the Roberts Rules Study Club. Nice to have you both here today.
Thank you.
And we're talking about today a subject that, as we've seen in the meetings over the years, amendments. And amendments can get really kind of tied up because sometimes there's an amendment to the amendment, and you have to kind of work your way backwards.
You just gave our presentation.
There you are. All right. Thank you very much. So tell me, in general, what an amendment is. So we have, we have kind of an idea, but there's some specific way that Robert's Rules looks at it.
Well, amendments modify a motion, okay? And people hesitate when they have a difference of opinion how to approach it. And the proper approach is a motion to amend an existing action that is under consideration.
And the purpose of it, as you said, is someone that is within that realm, on the board in this case,
Right.
or in a committee, may feel that for their own reasons, it can be a lot of different reasons. There's something big they want to change. There's something minor. It can
Right,
be simply
that-
just wording, but it still has to be amended.
The purpose of the amendments is to try to get the group to agree on the various ideas
Right.
that are being proposed. But you have to see, the amendment should say exactly where in the main motion the change is to be made, and precisely the words to use.
Right.
Because if not, it can get to be a real mess.
And Mike, it is, in many cases, it's giving direction, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, a good example, Tuesday's GRF board meeting.
Right.
And somebody offered an amendment, and it was not in writing, and it was not precise as to where in the resolution the amendment should be inserted.
Okay.
And there was a discussion on where, with the secretary and the chair and the person making the motion. We should put it, there should be word-by-word directions for the secretary how to change the main motion.
And I'm going to step in here and saying that the chair can and often should require the amendments to be submitted in writing, so the secretary has the exact wording that the person wants. And this makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and go ahead. I know you're going to add to that as well.
Okay. Basic rules for amendments. You can insert or add words, and once again, I remember an experience in the military 100 years ago, and we had an instructor that was from the South, and he was rocking back and forth heel to toe, and he said, "Men's, I can't distress this point enough." And I can't stress enough that you start with, "I move," to insert words, or to strike out words, or to strike out and insert, replace words with, "I move to strike out the words blank and insert the words blank." Okay, a motion. You have so much flexibility with making an amendment. And I watched the board meetings, and we have these lengthy resolutions. We have very few impromptu motions where it's on the agenda, it's discuss and correct an issue, which gives them freedom.
And the freedom also includes the amending of paragraphs, of inserting or adding a paragraph, striking out a paragraph, or substituting. And again, the wording is, I move to substitute for the pending motion the following. And, you know, these are words that should always be there, and they are precise.
Okay.
And the secretary has to be able to take them. That's the reason I keep saying, put them in writing so that the secretary has a chance to get the motion correct.
And then moving on, and as I was saying, this is where these steps can move on and on. You got to work backwards. Is amending amendments, because someone may come up with an amendment that overall people seem to agree on, but one other person goes, okay, in essence, I like what you said, but I would like to tweak it this way.
Yeah.
That secondary amendment is common procedure. It's allowed. You can't go beyond a second to it.
Okay, so once you go down there, it's like, okay, you got to go back up to the top again, basically.
You must vote on
Okay.
the amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
You can vote it down, or you can vote down the original and start over.
Okay.
That amending the amendment is tricky, but it's simple. It's a second level that is permitted and is encouraged. We just apparently the motions that are being offered by our current boards are one, in the form of resolutions, and two, are seldom debated or amended. They seem to be, people are in lockstep, and it's decided in committee, and it's done. But
Let me ask a point here, and I know you've talked about this before. When it comes to amendments, at each step, the first amendment and or if there's a secondary amendment, it becomes open for discussion. Am I correct?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then open for discussion, and then you go, let's vote on the amendment to amend it. Let's say that goes up or down. And then you say, okay, now let's vote on the main amendment, up or down.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
And you bring up another point, not specifically to amendments, but you said, let's vote. And somehow in the last year, the chairs of these board meetings have developed I call the question. Calling the question is a motion.
Okay.
And it requires a vote to end discussion. Calling the question is a motion.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, and repeat the motion.
So calling the question would happen possibly if discussion was belaboring on, and it's like, okay, we have to come to a head here.
Yes.
I'm calling the question.
Yes.
Let's end this discussion back and forth.
And the
Yeah.
proper wording on calling the question is, I move the previous question.
Okay. Okay, we're getting a little off track because we're
Yeah.
talking about amendments,
Yes.
but that's the part that can get a little complicated. And of course, the whole point is sticking to the subject and having any amendments in sticking to the subject of the original motion or resolution, right?
Exactly, because it's so easy to be on the boards and getting caught up in saying, well, that reminds me of, or da-da-da-da. And we have to always make sure that whatever we're talking about as an amendment or as a comment about the amendment is germane to the main topic. And this is important for the board, but it's also important for the people in the audience who are trying to listen and trying to keep up with what
Exactly.
is going on, because that when you get these amendments too complex, the people in the audience are shaking their heads and saying, what are they talking about?
Right.
And so we
Exactly.
have to make sure that everything is kept to be very germane to the motion.
What is the settled rule?
Settled rule is you can't bring up the same subject for discussion or a motion on the subject that you just settled.
Okay.
It's settled and it's done in that meeting. Okay?
All right.
Once it's voted on. And by the way, the discussion that we are having about amendments is covered in the Roberts Rules,
Okay.
The big book.
The big book. All
the
right.
700-page book, and they address 38 pages to amendments.
All right. So if you want some light reading at night, there
Yes.
you go. Is that available in Kindle edition? I bet you it is.
I bet you it is, because I know that we can get the summary version.
I want to mention that you folks, your study club, will be having a meeting coming up on May 14th, which is Saturday. We have this
Right.
up here.
That our meetings are always on the second Saturday of the month, and the May's meeting is at the Towers.
Very good.
The June's meeting will be in Garden Grove, and the July's meeting will be back at the Towers, et cetera, because we change off.
Okay.
And I say, call Mike for information and for carpool.
For carpool. All right.
Information of going down to Garden Grove.
All right. And Mike's number is 949-830-8717. And maybe you want to call him for consultation. He can call you up for a board meeting. Did we do this right?
Yeah.
All right. Good to see both of you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Debbie.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
And again, the Roberts Rule Study Club, their next meeting, 9 o'clock on Saturday, May 14th at the Key Club Room, which is located at the Towers. We'll be right back.